Hey everyone, this is Coach Tall Guy. Today I'm going to take some time to talk about U9, U10 soccer positions, specifically when you're playing in a 2-3-1 shape. I think this will be beneficial for you guys to see how, visually, your players should be on the soccer field. So looking at the diagram here below, you're going to notice we're in our two defenders, three midfielders, and one forward. And I kind of put these lines, these dashed lines here for you guys so you can kind of see the different parts of the fields, how we want to split that field into thirds. So we have an outside third here, another outside third here, and then our middle third. So in this situation, what we want to do is immediately stop the ball with our center midfielder. So our center midfielder is putting pressure on the ball. Now you're going to notice that our two outside midfielders here and here, they have tucked into the middle and they've given some cover here. All right, they're not flat and they're not flat. And the reason we don't necessarily want them flat is if the player goes flat here, so they're even with this center midfielder, it's going to leave a nice passing lane for that ball to go in behind. Even if the player on the offensive team is over here and they're open, by the time they play that square pass, we should be able to close that space down. The big thing I want you guys as coaches to understand is defensively, we want to get kids behind the soccer ball. So you'll notice in this, we have basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players behind the ball, and we're nice and compact. We've closed down a lot of those passing lanes. We're keeping our forwards still high. So when the ball is in the middle of the pitch, it's just gotten across midfield. We want to have our center midfielder pressure that ball. We want our two outside midfielders to tuck in behind a little bit, behind the center midfielder. And then you're going to notice our two defenders here are tucked in behind a nice little triangle shape. And they're really giving that depth, okay? They're not out here. One's not out here. One's not out here. We're protecting the middle part of the field, okay? Now moving down, okay, we're still here. That was this in the middle there. Now let's say the ball has been played out wide. Notice how our team shape is going to change quite a bit. So now our outside midfielder is pressuring the ball. The forward's tracking back a little bit. The center midfielder has slide over to now provide that cover. And we still have our two defenders here who have given us some depth. But you'll notice how far I dropped that other outside midfielder. So that outside midfielder, if you'll notice in our first diagram here, was there, is now dropped in and flattened out this line. So that's our offense, that's our offside line right there, sorry. Dropped in and given a lot of depth and balance on the field, okay? Now, sometimes kids are wondering, well, what about these open spaces here? Well, again, we're playing U9, U10 soccer, so for a boy or girl to switch the point of attack all the way across the field, one, it's a pretty impressive ball for that age. Two, it's okay. We want to make sure that if they're even able to make that switch, by the time the ball would come across the field, we're going to be able to close those spaces down pretty quickly. The big thing is we just don't want kids running in behind our defense, okay? If I leave this outside midfielder here, it's going to leave a huge passing lane right there for the player, and that's a shorter pass to the midfield and then through. So notice again, we still have what we want here is we have players behind the ball, lots of players behind the ball, and we're keeping that area compact, all right? That's the principles of defense. Players behind the ball, keeping it compact. And you're going to see on this one, same thing, just on the other side of the field. Outside midfielder pressures. Okay, this one's a little bit different. Center midfielder is going to come across. This time, the outside midfielder didn't come all the way back, all right? So depending on who you're playing and what teams, if you feel like, hey, we can put enough pressure on the ball, we're not too worried, we're going to force them to try to make this pass. If you leave your outside midfielder in this situation a little bit higher, you might be able to pick off those passes. But again, what I want you to notice is just the number of players behind the ball staying pretty compact. Now moving down, let's say the ball comes down the field so it's closer to our goal, all right? Got to get compact again. Notice we got players behind the ball, nice and compact. I really want to draw your attention to these two defenders because at U9 and U10 we have a big tendency, like One defender will be out here, one defender will be out here. So they're playing in the outside third of the fields, and then we're leaving the middle third of the field completely open. So in this situation, we want to make sure that both defenders are inside that middle third. So they're inside these lines, okay, in the middle of the field. We have a nice little triangle shape. So in this situation, both the defenders here can provide cover. We really want to get nice and compact as they get closer and closer to our goal. I hope this is a good visual for you guys. Again, just coach up these two players. We cannot have them over here and over here, and that's pretty common in youth soccer at this level. If you can just kind of coach your kids to stay like 10 yards at all times moving together, that would be fantastic. And then when the ball goes to the outside of the box, all right, notice our two defenders are still staying home a little bit, okay? Our outside or our center midfielders come over into this zone to stop the ball. The other outside midfielders come across quite a bit. I probably should put that one just a little bit more over here. But we have that compactness, players behind the ball. We have our outside midfielder also chasing back. Our forward has come back down the field, still high, but has come back to provide some support as well. And this is just on the other side of the field. So you can see, again, pressure on the ball, numbers behind the ball. We have an outside midfielder tracking back. Let's just say they got beat. Our forward stays high. So I'll send this out to you coaches as well, just so you can have some visuals to look at. And you can use some cones to help the players. One of the things, going back to this original photo, let me move up a little bit. I want us to understand too, defensively, it's very easy for us to coach. Like we could say our two outside backs here, or our two defenders, just coach them to stay on the 18. I want us to try to avoid that. You'll hear this word in soccer a lot. We want the team to stay connected. So what we're talking about connected is we want to keep the distances, particularly when we're playing defense, close. So like think of 10 yards as kind of a good just overall like distance. 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards. If our players can stay within 10 yards of each other, particularly on defense, we're staying connected. If I had these players stay down here, we're going to have a big gap in the middle of the field. And to a certain extent, that'll work just because they're young, and by the time the opposing team gets in front of the goal, they're probably not strong enough to shoot. These kids are in good position to block. We're not really worrying about a through ball, but we're not really teaching them good principles of defense. We're not really teaching them to stay connected. One of the things I always like to talk to kids when I see kids just hanging back the whole time, even though the ball's down here and they're still on their 18-yard line, is if we move up the field, not only are we connected with our midfielders, but if we win the ball here, we're much closer to going down the field and scoring versus winning the ball here. We've got a lot farther to go to score, all right? Plus, if I win the ball here, it's a much easier pass for me to my outside midfielders. It's a much shorter pass to get it to my forward versus if I win the ball here, I'm going to have a lot farther to go down the field. The pass might be a lot longer, particularly to my forward. It's going to be a long pass. So please encourage your players to stay connected. I think there's this real fear of like, well, if I move down the field, then I'm not blocking the goal. I mean, we also got to remember we're going to have a goalkeeper here as well. And even then, I would encourage our goalies to move up. The last thing you have to think about as the kids get older, the offside line, that becomes a big deal. So you can use offside to your advantage. If players are hanging so far back, you're never going to be able to use offside to your advantage. You're just giving up lots of space and you end up having to defend more. So I try to encourage players to do the work early to get down the field, and it's actually less defending versus waiting. Then you got to defend more. So, and soccer is an active game, so staying connected. So just to reiterate, I think the main principles I want you coaches to understand is we've got to stop the ball first. Once we stop the ball, we want to get numbers behind the ball. And then thirdly, we want players to stay compact. We want them to stay connected defensively. The more compact